You see, Oda is like the end of this mount. In Kwachabad we used to also focus for that, yeah. But once you get past Shvat, you get into Oda, people already start feeling like the end of the term. Yeah, all right. Good. All right, so this is working, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're turning to the opening of the Parsha. Chapter 25, Kof Hey. Pasuk Aleph. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe leimer. Then he says, what's with Shema? And
check.
B'Tzalel.
I could go quick. Should I go quickly?
I thought, where were you now?
I went to.
Oh, you were upstairs.
Yeah, I was
somewhere else.
Yeah.
The Shimon doesn't seem to be here. I went to him.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't seem to be here.
Oh wow.
The whole place is empty. But maybe B'Tzalel? I don't know.
I'll go to. Oh, here's Shimon. Hey, Shimon.
Better.
Yeah.
Fast.
Good. All right. So let's make a start. Daber al b'nai Yisrael v'yichu li Trumah me'esh kol ish asher yidvenu li boi tichachu es Trumasi. But it's Yidua, the diuk in this pasuk, that the purpose of the tzivui, of the commandment that Moshe is being given, is to take the word Trumah in Pashtus, means, how do you call it, like donation or giving, separating, like Rashi says, it's got in it the concept of hafrosha, like separating out from your, and the Targum also calls it yafrishun, kadmaya afroshusa, yet how you separate off from your ownership and give to the Mishkan. So if that's the case, it would have been more fitting to say v'yitnu li trumah. Why is it written v'yichu li trumah? V'yichu means to take. It would appear that they are taking something. V'yichu li trumah, it's mashma that they're taking. And yet the pasuk obviously doesn't mean that. It means that they're giving. So it should have been written a word that implied them giving. Why should it be written v'yichu li trumah? And then it lists a whole series of things that they're supposed to give. And it's well known there's either 11 of them or there's 13. There are different opinions as to how many things are listed that you have to take from the Yidden Trumah to the building and the function of the Mishkan. And then afterwards, he says, what is the actual purpose of all this donation and money? He says, Vasuli Mikdash Ve'shochanti B'Seichom, that they should make me a Mikdash, and I will dwell B'Seichom, amongst them, literally. So it's Yidua, the famous diuk in that should have been written, Vasuli Mikdash Ve'shochanti B'Seichoi, and I will dwell in the Mikdash. That's what the pasuk is apparently saying. And yet, nonetheless, it says, V'shochanti b'seichom, I will dwell in them. Yeah, mashma, that the whole purpose of the Mishkan is not that Hashem should dwell in the Mishkan, but that the Mishkan will dwell or will cause that Hashem will dwell amongst the Jewish people. So we need to understand, what is that implication. And then he says, K'koil Hashem, on Pasuk Tes, he says, according to all that I'm going to show you here, when I'm going to show you now all the inyanim, Eish tavnis ha-mishkan ve'eish tavnis kol kelo. I'm going to show you the shape and what, is the actual form of the Mishkan and all of its vessels that are going to be necessary. V'chein tasu, and this is what you should do. So the expression v'chein tasu is superfluous in simple implication, because he's telling him what he's supposed to be doing. And he says you have to make a Mishkan, you have to make it in the way which I'm going to show you. V'chein tasu, the Lashon tasu is a plural. And since he's talking to Moshe, if he wanted to say that, he should have said v'chein taseh. This is the way you'll do it. But if we'll say that that appears to be unnecessary, then why does he change it into the Lashon Rabbi? We have v'chein tasu, you should do. So a lot of the great Meforshim, the Ibn Ezra and the Ramban and others of the great early commentators, they say that the expression of v'chein tasu, based on Lashonos in our sages, the truth is, v'chein tasu means this is what you should do for all the generations to come. V'chein tasu l'doros, for the generations to come. So it's well known, there's a kasha on that, as the Ramban brings down, that when Shlomo HaMelech, he built the Beis HaMikdash, and that was the Beis HaMikdash of Rishon, and he was generations after the Mishkan in the desert, he made differently than what Moshe Rabbeinu was told by the Eibishter. There's a certain basic similarity in the way the Beis HaMikdash was, built and shaped and everything, similar somewhat, very much on the same basic plan as the Mishkan, but it certainly wasn't exactly like the Mishkan. And Shlomo HaMelech made several menorahs, for example. He made more than one, and he made a lot of changes and shinuim. The same with the kruvim on the kapoiros of the oren and everything. He had, apart from the ones on the oren, he built two big kruvim that stood from both sides of the oren. He made a lot of changes, Shlomo HaMelech, in the actual Beis HaMikdash.
What happened to the kelim from the Mishkan? They were lost?
According to most opinions, they were buried, or, how do you call it, hidden away somewhere. Because the Mishkan wasn't actually destroyed, like the Beis HaMikdash. The two Bati Mikdash were destroyed by enemies from the outside. The Mishkan, not like that. Due to all sorts of pressures that could have been partly due to outside influence and so on, the Mishkan just sort of stopped being. But it wasn't actually conquered per se, and taken or stolen, etc., by the Goyim. And so what happened to all the Kelim, it's brought down that they were hidden away, either dug into the ground, or they were, but they still somehow or another exist. And there's a whole discussion about that. And Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be present at the Geula Shlema. He's going to be one of the leaders of the whole Geula. So there's a suggestion on certain authorities that all of his kelim are going to come out again, and they'll be revealed at the time of the Geula. Because we have a cloud that anything that Moshe Rabbeinu made is everlasting. Because of his tremendous madrega, whatever his hands made, it's everlasting. Follow? And that's one of the whole things that they say it was a chesed. It's even brought down in our Medrash that it was a big chesed that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't actually go into Eretz Yisrael. Because had he gone into Eretz Yisrael, and he would have been in charge of building the Mishkan, or the Beis HaMikdash, then it wouldn't have been able to be destroyed. They wouldn't have been, the Goyim wouldn't have been able to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. So what would have happened, the Chas v'Shalom, it could have meant that the Jewish people instead would have been destroyed. And that's a whole big discussion all of its own right, which I don't really intend going into all of it here. There's an implication that it was a chesed for the Jewish people that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go over. It's a whole discussion. Anything Moshe Rabbeinu made is everlasting. Anyway, V'chein tasu means you should do this way for all the generations to come. So I ask the question, what is the necessity of writing that in? Particularly that if we're going to say it was l'doidos, like I pointed out, the general pattern of the Migdosh Harishon of Shlomo HaMelech had a similarity to the Mishkan, but it's hard to say that all the kelim and all the inyanim were made in the same way that Moshe Rabbeinu made them in the desert. You follow? So we need to understand what is the implication of that statement of V'chein tasu. All right, so those are the questions we're going to deal with, and I'm going to try and present a case that really nothing has changed. That the be'emes, the building at the Mishkan in the desert created a certain inyan which, like we just said, Moshe Rabbeinu is involved, then it's everlasting. And I'll develop on that as we go along. However, I just want to make a general point that we see that the inyan of a person's involvement in Torah is what determines his whole, how would you call it, his whole life. But Mela, one of the Ikar implications of the whole inyan of Matan Torah and the whole inyan of our life as Yidden after the Torah was given, the Torah has got to be an essential part of our existence, and a man's just got to be, there's a saying in Yiddish, a shtik Torah. He's got to be just a piece of the Torah. In other words, he's like a piece of Torah walking on 2 feet. If he will be like that, then he will approach what we're going to sort of try and present. And so everybody says, well, you always tell some sort of a story. So I'm going to tell you a story, but this story is brought down in certain Sforim, B'Shem HaMedrash. But exactly which Medrash it is, I'm not able to say. I made a brief survey in some of the likely places, but I don't know exactly which Medrash it is, but since they write it in a very responsible way, that it's B'Shem HaMedrash, then we have to assume that it's in one of the Medrashim. And that is that, you know, that Beis Hamikdash Hasheni was destroyed by the Romans, and that was destroyed by Titus HaRosha Yemak Shemoy. You've all heard of him. You have Titus HaRosha. So the thing is that at the beginning, when the Romans conquered Jerusalem and they got close to the Mikdash, it would appear from all that we read and we see that, you know, they were very sure of themselves. But the truth is that it appears that when they actually reached the point where they could actually go into the Etzem Mikdash, B'fnim, b'toich Etzem HaMishkon, b'toich HaMikdash, Beis HaMikdash, B'fnim, the entrance through the Ulam into the Mamish, into the Mikdash, then they sort of hesitated. The leading people, later Titus HaRosha himself, went inside, and what he did is brought down the Gemara and said to Gittin, but I don't want to. But that was all a later point. That was once they'd already actually got him. But when they first came and they conquered enough to be into the entrance of the actual Mikdash, then they were scared. They got all of a sudden very scared because they'd heard about the great, what do you call it, Kedusha and the great speciality of the Beis Hamikdash. So they were worried that it would in some way damage them, and who knows what might happen to them. So they didn't want to go in. So what they did was they said, we'll have to get hold of a Yid, and we'll get him to go in. We'll send him in, and we'll see what happens. So they decided that they're not going to get anybody stumped to go in, and they'll have to offer him a big reward. So they got the idea, which actually, this is what happened. They found a guy, and they even mentioned his name. His name is, that's what they call him, Al-Chapan Yeshiv Mishiso. Apparently there was some place called Shiso. Anyway, he was called, his first name was Yosef. And they noticed that he was how they call it, a Kaldas. He was the sort of guy that they thought that he would, he would do what they want. And they weren't mistaken. When they first spoke to him, he said, yeah, but, what am I going to get for this? So they said, you know what, there's a lot of precious, kalim in there. Whatever, you'll see on that, bring that out with you when you come back, and we'll let you have it. So this Yosef, she goes into the actual Mikdash, and he sees the menorah. So the menorah was a very beautiful, solid gold, and with was mikshor achas with the whole thing. So he sees this tremendous menorah. So he says, "Oh, I'll take this for my reward." And he made a brief sivur inside the Mishkan, and he seemed to be all right. So he picks up the menorah and he walks out and meets up with the leaders of the Roman army. And their eyes all jump out of their heads when they see the menorah. They never imagined that the menorah, that the kelim that they'd heard about were really so beautiful, so unbelievably beautiful, the kelim. So they decided that they're going to take that, you follow? And so they say to him, we're sorry, but this is a bit too personal. We didn't mean ad kedikach, but maybe you'd like to go in and bring out a few more things, and then we'll try to work out what we'll give you. So he, all of a sudden he says to them that I'm sorry, I'm not going back in again. He said, I've already done what you want. I went in, I bought out the Klali. He said, I'm not going in a second time. So they said, listen, not only we'll let you have whatever you bring up, we'll give you a lot of money, we'll pay you a big reward and everything. No matter what they said to try and persuade him, he, b'shum oifen, was not prepared to go back inside the Beis HaMikdash. Even at the beginning, he's described as a kal das, you follow? But he wasn't muchen to go back into the Mishkan. So they started, Rahman litzlan, they started to torture him. And they said, we want you to go back in. And he was not having any. So in the end, they actually killed him very unpleasantly, very not nicely. And they heard him say before he passed away, he said, Oy li shani hichasti es boili. Woe is me that I made angry my Creator. In other words, when I went in, I'm not supposed to go in, and particularly I'm not tahor and everything. Yeah, so he said, I made angry my Creator. So that's basically the end of the story. And then later they went in themselves and the whole Churban began. And then Tito Shemach Shmoy, he came onto the scene and he did whatever was brought down in the Gemara Masechet Gittin, and the whole thing began. So ask yourself the simple question, what happened to this guy? He went in and he bought out the menorah and he thought that was going to be his reward, and he seemed to be quite happy with himself. And then all of a sudden he said he's not going back in again, b'shum oifen, and he was even moisa nefesh. He gave himself up on Kiddush Hashem, not to go back in. You follow? So I thought the question, what happened to him? What is going on here? Elamai, it's like the old saying that he wasn't the same person when he came out as the person that went in. And when he got in, he didn't go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Kemura. He went into the Etzem Migdosh before the how do you call it, the parade. And so he didn't go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but he went into the Mishkan, into the Migdosh. Sorry, But maybe we see Lefizeh that even a kal das, that's what he's called. He went into the Mishkan. He came out abal Mesiras Nefesh for Madrega Gavoya, and he wasn't prepared b'shum oifen to go back in there. Nimtza, that the going into the Migdosh did something to him, or it had some hashpah on him. So what I want to try and bring out here as we go along, for example, if we take on a slightly different angle, but it's basically the same general inyan, if we take on a slightly different angle, are those of us who were zeicher to go into Yechidas with the Rebbe. Ismaila, you were standing outside in this line in Gan Eden Atachta, before you went in to the meeting. And gradually, your whole Metzius was just dissolving, And when you went in, you were no longer the same person. It could not possibly be described that somebody who actually went in and was with the Rabbi personally inside. When he came out, he was just the same as when he went in. That doesn't, even by people who were not Lubavitchers, but Klali, even, let's say, people who were Kali Das, if there's such a thing nowadays, I don't know, Emerson Kali Das, that's a way of like being matired to yourself. What is going on here? So, Imke, let's think for a moment, what is really the story of this whole inyan Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. And the truth of the matter is that it's written pretty clearly in Tanya. And that's to say in chapter 47, the Alter Rebbe says a very fascinating thing over there about the we're learning, Vayichuli Trumah, Me'eis Kol Ish. The Alter Rebbe brings that pasuk in chapter 47 in Tanya, and he brings from the Zohar HaKodesh, the Alter Rebbe, and he says that Trumah is referring to the Torah. And the Torah is, the word Trumah is Torah Mem. It's the word for Torah with a Mem in it. And the Mem is the 40 days that Moshe was on the mountain. But say Trumah is referring to Torah. And it's written that way in the Zohar HaKodesh, albeit you've got to sort of look for it in the Zohar HaKodesh, but it's well known. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya and many in Yonim, he's got this amazing pincer deal, that these pincers go down in a certain phrase in the Zohar HaKodesh, and he builds up from that a most amazing case. So he's a very good example of that. It's true, the Zohar HaKodesh does say that Trumah is referring to the Torah. So, Ad Kedei Kach, the Zohar HaKodesh says that doesn't really mean that the Yidden gave anything. What it really means is that they took, and that's what our question was at the beginning. Right. So what does it mean they took? They took li, vayichu li Trumah. So, the Zohar HaKodesh says, don't read li, but read ot, yeah. That they took me. Yeah, they took me, and together with that they took the Torah. It should be written, says the Zohar, vayichu li v'trumah. Yeah? First you'll take the Eibishter, and then you'll take the Torah. So the Zohar HaKodesh says, it's all one thing. The Eibishter and the Torah is all one thing. And if you take the Torah the right way, then you're taking the essence of the Eibishter. And if you take the essence of the Eibishter, let's say you go that way, then you take the Torah automatically, because it's all one thing. The whole purpose of this pasuk at the beginning, at the Pasha, is to tell you that you've got to take the very essence of the Eibishter, oti, meaning myself, li. And the word li really means oti, yeah, myself. You have to take the very essence of Hashem together with the Torah. You follow? That's what the Alter Rebbe learns pshat in the Zohar HaKodesh. I looked it up in the Zohar. It's a little bit tricky, but you can reach a conclusion of that sort. Yeah? Let's put it that way. Yeah. The Alter Rebbe is altering, but he says it clearly over there in chapter 47, that he says that you can be exactly like Avraham Avinu, and that's what everybody has to be like, his forefathers. You can be absolutely batel and completely absorbed in Elokus in a way that you are batel b'metzias, mamish, in Elokus, if you learn Torah, if you devote yourself to Torah, then you're taking the very essence of the Eibishter, and you become completely non-existent almost. You become batel b'metzias. So everybody looks pretty calm about that, but I don't know what we can expect. Too much. It's not feasible to expect that people fall off their chairs. It's well known that I found a mockey for that. I think I told you in one of the classes. I saw a story where a great person met another very great person, and that other very great person said to him a very unsurprising pshat, And it's written, Hu nofal mi kis oi. He fell from his chair, yeah. So I've got a basis for tightening that. Anyway, so kumtois, that this whole pasuk is, wait a minute, it's supposed to be talking about giving things for the Mishkan. All of a sudden, the Alter Rebbe is taking us into a field where it's talking about Torah. Yeah? And why is it written by Yichu? Because you are taking the very essence of the Eibishter with the